Welcome. It is Verdict with Senator Ted Cruz, Ben Ferguson with you. And Senator, it is election night. We're doing a dual pod right now for our show and my show as well. There's one big takeaway. It was a great election night in general for conservatives all over the country.
Well, we had election night in Texas, and it was a big election. It was a consequential election. We had the runoff for the U.S. Senate race, and we now know with absolute certainty that come January, I'm going to be serving with a new senator from the state of Texas. We had the Republican runoff between my current colleague, John Cornyn, and his challenger, Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton. And Paxton won decisively, a big double-digit victory. We're going to break down what happened in election night and what it means for Texas. We're also going to break down what's next in the general election. Who is the Democrat nominee, this James Tallarico guy, and I'll warn you, it ain't pretty. We're going to get into that in detail right now.
Yeah, he's definitely a radical, and we're going to let all of America understand exactly who he is. Want to take a moment, though, and talk to you about your dog, whether it's old, young. We got a new puppy. There is something that you can give your dog to make sure that your dog has the best life ever, and it's called Rough Greens. I tell you, moving from the puppy years to old age brings in nostalgia. Remember the day you brought your puppy home, the tiny paws, the wagging tail, the spark in their eyes, and man, that energy that just wouldn't quit? Well, they've gotten older. You wonder where that spark went. They're slower, pickier at mealtime. Their stomach often seems off, and you find yourself cleaning up those messes, worrying and quietly thinking, is this just what aging looks like? That's not old age, by the way. That's actually malnutrition. They're missing their probiotics, the enzymes, the omega oils, and the live vitamins and minerals that your dog needs to digest and absorb food. When the gut is out of balance, everything's harder for your dog that you love. And that's where Rough Greens really come in. I've seen it firsthand as our dog got older, and we got our dog back that happiness in life. And in fact, Rough Greens is America's #1 dog supplement. You just sprinkle it right over their current food, and it's packed with all the live nutrients that they need. It's all natural, made in the US of A, and thousands of dogs are feeling younger, more energetic, and healthier than they have in years. Your dog could be one of them, and I want you to get a free Jumpstart trial bag for your dog today, and you'll understand exactly why it's amazing. You just cover the shipping costs. Go to roughgreens.com, and all you have to do is use the discount code VERDICT. That's RUFF greens.com, discount code VERDICT. Rough Greens, they make any dog better. So, Senator, this is one of those that is a very interesting case study in traditionally, if you are an establishment, if you are an incumbent, you have a massive advantage. You have a lot of fundraising that comes in. You got a lot of Washington money that comes in. You have special interest money. Like, you got a lot of advantages and usually a bigger microphone. What we have learned so far through this whole process around the country is just because you have that, if Donald Trump decides that he wants to go against you and wants to back another America First candidate he believes will serve the interests of his agenda better, you could be in serious trouble. We watched it happen in Louisiana. We've now seen it happen in Texas.
Well, I think that's right. There was an awful lot going on in this race. Let's start off just with the results. So we're sitting here. It's right now 11:43 p.m. Tuesday night, election night. And as of right now, this is with 92% of the results in, Ken Paxton is getting 64% of the vote. John Cornyn is getting 36%. So that is, as of right now, 858,547 votes for Ken Paxton. Oh, just bumped up. 862,150 votes for Ken Paxton to 484,625 for John Cornyn. So that is nearly a 30-point victory, a 28-point victory. We'll see what the final numbers are when all the votes are tallied. But that is a massive win. And that represents...
That's a bloodbath for any incumbent. I don't care if you're Republican or Democrat, and that's how the media is treating it as well.
Well, and it represents a sea change. So John Cornyn has been in the Senate for 24 years. He has been an institution in the Senate. He was the majority whip of the Senate, so he was the #2 elected Republican in the Senate. He served that position for 6 years. John Cornyn ran for majority leader. When we took the majority, when Mitch McConnell stepped down as majority leader, John Cornyn ran against John Thune, And it was a close election. John Cornyn obviously did not prevail, but it was a vote that was decided by just a couple of votes. And so John Cornyn in a different universe would have been the majority leader of the United States Senate right now. And instead he has faced an election where he lost by 28 points. Now, there were a number of factors at play there, and I will say Donald Trump endorsed late, and there's no doubt it had a very significant impact. That being said, most of the polling that was in this race, even before the Trump endorsement, showed that Paxton was going to win and was likely to win with a sizable victory. And so I think the Trump endorsement certainly grew that margin of victory and made it the dramatic, the nearly 30-point victory that it was. But I think one of the factors that caused President Trump to endorse is he was looking at the same polling everyone else was looking at that showed Paxton with a significant lead in the race to begin with. There are a lot of reasons for this, but in many ways this race played out as a traditional conservative versus establishment primary. And that's a primary I know a lot about. My race 14 years ago when I was elected to the Senate was very much the same dynamic where I was running against David Dewhurst. He was the sitting lieutenant governor. He had universal name ID. He had over $200 million, so he wrote a $35 million check to his own campaign. And I'd never been elected to nothing. Like literally the last thing I was elected to was student council. Yeah. So I was at 2% in the polls.
I was ahead of you technically because I did win, I think, class president freshman year in college. So I even had more credentials than you did at that moment. I just want to make sure that the audience understands that right now.
It was an impossible race, and yet what we saw when I was elected in 2012 is we saw the conservative grassroots come together, and we ended up going from 2% in the polls to winning by double digits in the primary, and winning by double digits. We won the primary by 14 points, and we won the general by 16 points. And so it was an amazing victory of the conservative grassroots against the person everyone thought was the unbeatable frontrunner. This Cornyn-Paxton race had similar dynamics. The money in this race was massive. So this has now shattered records.
Yeah,
for the single most expensive Senate race in American history, in a primary.
In a primary.
This race,
we're talking more than usually just spent in a general election by a lot.
So just in phase one of the primary, over $100 million was spent. I think when you tally the runoff, it will end up being well north of $150 million spent in this primary. And the overwhelming, the 90+% of that was spent supporting John Cornyn. So. Yeah. Paxton spent relatively little money and won by an overwhelming margin. Now, one of the consequences of this is the Democrats, they are looking to attack Ken Paxton. He is a conservative. Both Ken and John are friends. I've served with John Cornyn 14 years. He and I are very different senators, but we've worked well together, and we've worked in a cooperative and collegial way. That's part of how you represent your state.
Sure.
And at the same time, Ken Paxton has been a friend of mine for a long time. Both Paxton and Cornyn I've supported previously. I've campaigned with them previously. I've campaigned for them previously. Paxton, objectively, I believe, has been the most conservative state attorney general in the country. He has a strong record as a conservative state AG, and that was a big part of why he prevailed. And that was driving his momentum long before President Trump made his endorsement. That being said, there are a lot of nasty personal attacks that have been leveled at Ken Paxton, and the odds are precisely 100.0% that we will see millions and millions of dollars of attack ads in the general election, bringing up every one of those personal attacks and going after him viciously. The Democrats are not going to play nice because they see a chance. The Democrats believe they have a chance to win the general. And I got a message to Republicans in Texas and nationwide. Do not take this general election for granted.
Amen to that.
It is easy to say it's Texas, it's red, we're going to win, and I believe we are going to win. But I also think the Democrat nominee, James Tallarico, is a dangerous candidate.
There was obviously a massive victory that happened in this country with the overturning of Roe v. Wade. But what it really meant was the issue of abortion would go back to the states. And that is where the real fight has actually begun. Now, over the past 50 years, Americans United for Life has filed more than 200 legal briefs and also helped create at least 400 pro-life bills in over 40 states by writing model legislation. They are consulting with state legislators and defending their own laws and other pro-life statutes in court. Now, AUL's dual front approach of writing and defending legislation has proved an effective one that could become even more impactful as pro-life state legislators move to enact protections for preborn babies and their mothers. Now that the legality of abortion has returned to the states, that is where you come in. You and I have the opportunity to overturn pro-abortion laws and advance pro-life legislation that attacks the most vulnerable in our society, from the womb to the tomb. Together, we can shape the future of our nation through life-affirming legislation in every state. Now, a gift of just $25 helps hold abortion providers accountable and helps protect women and unborn children across this country. And now through a match, your gift is doubled. Donate securely at aul.org/verdict. That's aul.org/verdict. Sponsored by Americans United for Life. Before we get to James, I want to just go back and let people understand the basis for why you have that warning. You have been in the same position in many ways that Ken's walking into. You have a Democratic Party that is very energized. You have a Democratic Party that is well funded. You have a Democratic Party that sends massive amounts of cash into Texas against a conservative, and you were the number one target, maybe twice in your career, I think it may be fair to say, by Democrats wanting to get rid of you. And the majority of the money coming into that race was from outside interest groups outside the state, massive amounts of money coming from places like California and New York. And the reason why you said your warning the way that you just said it is because they do get better at this over time, not worse at it. They start to realize where they messed up, where they maybe spent money they shouldn't have spent, and they get smarter and smarter. That's part of the reason why you're saying this warning, not just in Texas, but around the country.
Yeah, look, I have been there before. Both of my re-elects, I was Chuck Schumer's number one target in the country, and so they've thrown everything in the kitchen sink trying to take me out, and I've been there. They're getting ready to do that to Ken Paxton, and actually there is potentially a real analogy between 2026 and 2018. 2018 was my first re-elect.
Yeah,
2018 was 2 years after Donald Trump was first elected president. In 2018, you had several things going on. Number one, the left was enraged. They hated Donald Trump, so they were energized, and they showed up in massive, massive numbers in 2018. And also, 2 years into the administration, without Trump on the ticket, there was some complacency, and so across the country, Republican turnout was not nearly as high as it had been, and those two together are a dangerous combination. What did that mean in 2018? Let me give you just what we faced. In that year, the Democrats more than doubled their turnout in Texas. They drove Democrat turnout from 1.8 million all the way up to 4 million, more than 2x. Now, my campaign, as you know, and you know my campaign team well, we're obsessively numbers and data driven.
Yes.
We saw all of that happening. We saw the surge in Democrat turnout, Democrats who'd never shown up coming out to vote. And so we set out to drive up Republican turnout. I did a 50-stop bus tour across the state, spent 6 weeks barnstorming the state, spent a lot of time in rural Texas, in deep East Texas, in West Texas, in the Panhandle. You've got conservative voters there who historically don't show up in midterms. They typically stay home. And I was ringing the bell saying, look, if you stay home, we will lose the state of Texas.
Yeah.
we ended up driving
And that was not
Republican
hyperbole,
turnout.
by the way.
No.
I was around that campaign, and we were nervous. By the way, when did you actually feel good in that year about like having a victory that day? If I remember correctly, till the very end, there was not a lot of like swagger in the campaign, like, oh, hey, we got this thing.
Well, and there's a reason for that. So we drove Republican turnout from 2.8 million all the way up to 4.2 million.
Yeah.
So I won by 0.2. I won by 200,000 votes out of more than 8 million votes cast statewide. The margin was 2.6%. And
Yeah.
look, a lot of observers, I'll tell you, the Beto O'Rourke campaign, I was running against Beto O'Rourke, and he was, particularly the first time he ran, which was against me, he was a remarkable candidate, charismatic, became a national phenomenon. That 2018 race at the time was the single most expensive Senate race in U.S. history. That's how much they wanted to take me out. To give you a sense of the kind of financial mismatch, because I was outspent 3-1 in that race. In the third quarter of 2018, I raised
3-1. By the way, when in politics, you don't usually win when you're down 3-1. Just so people understand how much outside influence money came in.
So let me give you a little bit of the math. Third quarter of 2018, I raised $12 million in hard money, people going to my website, contributing money. That was at the time the record for the most hard money any Senate candidate had raised in a single quarter in the history of the state of Texas.
Wow.
Do you know how long my record lasted?
I'm going to guess like 3 seconds.
2 hours. It took 2 hours.
Okay, 2 hours. There we go.
So my record was 12 million. It was the most. The old record had been like 8 or 9 million. So I had beaten the old record by a decent margin. My record was 12 million. 2 hours later, Beto O'Rourke reported his numbers. What do you think he raised that quarter?
If I remember it, was it like almost double what you had?
No, it was 38 million. It was more than 3x.
Yeah.
I had 12. He had 38 in one quarter. That was the
insane.
kind of dynamic we were facing. And I got to tell you, the Beto campaign was shocked to lose. They believed they had won that race. They went into election night thinking they'd won. They had confetti cannons on the stage because they're looking at the numbers and they're saying, okay, we've more than doubled turnout, game over. If you have
and they had unlimited spending power against you because the entire Democrat machine from D.C. to California was in to take you out. So if you've got unlimited funds and you double the turnout, in theory, you should absolutely win that race.
So 2026 has a lot in common with 2018. It's 2 years into the beginning of another Trump presidency. The left is highly energized. They're raising a ton of money. They hate Ken Paxton just like they hate me. They're going to raise a mountain of money against him. And I guarantee you, leftists are going to be energized and show up to vote. And the challenge is much the same as 2018. I called Ken tonight. I congratulated him. He was obviously very happy. And I said, listen, I'm all in. You have my total support. I'm going to do everything I can to help you raise money, to help you turn people out, to help you with the grassroots. We've got to win because the race is dangerous and the left is coming after him. And their candidate is very reminiscent of Beto O'Rourke. Now James Tallarico, he was a state rep. And he's someone whose substantive views are really extreme. Last podcast we did, we highlighted Graham Plattner, the communist with a Nazi tattoo in Maine, who is the Democrat nominee in Maine. And we talked about just how extreme and crazy the Democrat Party is. Well, James Tallarico is absolutely extreme. We're going to break that down in just a minute, but I will tell you what makes Tallarico dangerous and that worries me. Is he packages it in this very nice, aw shucks demeanor.
Yeah.
And he sounds like a preacher. He went to seminary. He has so he is a licensed preacher, and he much of what he says, he quotes biblical verses. And what worries me is someone who's not paying attention much to politics might turn on the TV and look at him and say, oh, he seems like a nice young man. And for me, I would rather my wolves come in wolves' clothing rather than look like a sweet, inoffensive, nice young man who happens to be an extreme radical left-winger, I'd rather they be out in the open and let you know exactly who they are.
Let's dive into who this guy is here, because you go back to 2022. James Tallarico said it is existential, all right, to reduce meat consumption.
What was that word again?
Existential. You're going to mock me on. You're going to mock me on the show tonight, aren't you? I've been talking a long time today, Senator.
Okay, try that word. There's a T in there.
Go ahead. I'll take the master class from you. You go ahead and say the word that I'm having a problem with tonight. I'm more than happy at midnight for you to say that word on my behalf.
That would be existential.
Existential. Sorry. There we go.
There we go.
Good. I can copy the word from you.
It's not that he has extrasensory abilities. That's something different. If he had ESP, that would be a different story.
The lickings I take, it's unbelievable. So back to 2022, and James, this is a guy that in Texas, I said this on Harris Faulkner's show on Fox Today when they were talking about the prime. Like, in Texas, we like meat. In Texas, we are ranchers. We are farmers. We're not vegans. We don't do this like mystery fake meat stuff. Like, that's just not who we are. But this is what he doesn't want you to know about him. Back in 2022, as a principal, by the way, while saying this, he was wearing a mask, the COVID mask for the press conference. Here he is in his own words. Take a listen. One.
We have, I think, heard more and more issues of animal welfare. I think not just because it's the right thing to do and the moral thing to do, but also it's, as all of you know, necessary to fight climate change. It is now existential that we try to reduce our meat consumption and that we try to respect animals in all aspects of society. And so I am proud to say that our campaign has officially become a non-meat campaign. So we are only buying vegan products from our local vegan businesses. Some of you may know Big Nona's. They were little Nona's, and then they opened up a brick and mortar, so another Big Nona's. But we just got our pizza from there today. And so the point is that I think all of us, not just policymakers, but everyone has to take personal responsibility in this effort.
I've never in my life heard a vegan campaign being propped up, much less like, you want to do that in Seattle? That actually may work. You want to do it in San Francisco? That may actually work. You want to do this up in New York City? I'm not even sure it would work there, actually, because they actually like normal food there. But saying our campaign as a responsible candidate is a vegan campaign, like that in Texas, and this goes back to like everyone needs to know who this guy is.
Well, look, and I get that you're taking this very personally because you owned a barbecue restaurant, and
yes.
And so he's taking a direct assault on your livelihood. Just wait till he comes out for banning guns and banning radio. I mean, you know, yeah. Ben will lose his mind.
I will. That is the fact.
You know, it's actually ironic that in 2018, when I was running against Beto of our 50-stop bus tour, my guess is a third of those stops were barbecue restaurants. If you're traveling little towns around the state, a lot of times barbecue restaurants are where you'll do a rally. And we were at one barbecue restaurant, I think it was in Columbus, Texas, a little town kind of halfway between Houston and Austin. And we're there, and PETA was there protesting me. They had signs out, and they were protesting people for the ethical treatment of animals. They were protesting against me. And I joked at the time. I said, look, thank you. I'm really glad PETA is here. And then they've underscored the stakes of this campaign, which is if you elect Beto O'Rourke, he's going to ban barbecue.
Yeah.
And look, it was a laugh line there. I didn't realize that fast forward to 2026, you're going to have someone who literally believes barbecue is immoral. And listen, if someone chooses to be vegetarian or vegan or what have you, look, to be clear, my wife, Heidi, is vegetarian. That's a choice you can make. I am an enthusiastic carnivore.
Yes, you and I had barbecue tonight, literally. That's like at a campaign event.
We had jalapeno sausage. It was good stuff. Jalapeno cheddar. And there was some sort of, I don't know, what was the veg? Was that like celery or something? It was jalapeno cheddar. There was something else. It was it was in the sausage. Did you not eat the sausage?
Oh, was it? Oh, I didn't have the sausage, but I also had the chicken. I had some of the brisket. You know, I was like carnivore, all like everything there. I thought you got down to the salad part.
You went with
Did you look at the salad part? There were some nice greens there for you, sir.
Okay, so you went with the girly meats, like you said. I went to the barbecue restaurant and I had turkey.
It was there, and I ate it. I feel good about it too.
Look, I think you're prepared to volunteer for Tallarico's campaign. I mean, if you're boycotting the sausage, that's not
no,
far.
I ate the sausage. It was good. I just didn't notice the green in there. I look over that stuff. I look for just pure. Is that meat? Is that cheese? I'm all in.
All right. So, look, it's the self-righteous way in which he lectures that.
Yes.
And it's saying, all of you are morally inferior to me. And I'm going to give you an example. We're going to play some of these, but I'm going to give you an example of some of the things he said. He has said God is non-binary.
Yeah.
Now, that's pretty out there. He has also said...
You know what? We've got the montage on that. You want to play that real quick?
We will in a second, but I want to just walk through some of it. He has also said they're not just two sexes. There are actually 6 biological sexes. 6.
What day in creation did God do the 6 sexes? I'm just curious. Was that on like the 8th day in the Bible? You just add that in there? I just want to know when that happened.
And by the way, your former employer, CNN, when they were covering a story about, I couldn't resist that, about Paxton hitting him for saying there's 6 biological sexes, CNN put a chyron on the bottom of the screen. Paxton falsely claims Tallarico said there's 6 biological sexes. He's on video. We're going to play it for you.
Yeah, he's on video, yeah.
And are you going to believe CNN or your own lying ears? He has said that the Bible justifies abortion, that he is pro-abortion because of the Bible.
And by the way, he's a pastor, so he's got to be right? Because he's a pastor, so therefore he would never lie about what the Bible says.
He has said Jesus was a radical feminist. He has said white men are the greatest domestic terrorist threat in our country.
You're Hispanic, so you don't have to worry about being... I'm the one that's the target there.
Well, he has said that illegal immigrants are his, quote, constituents. He has posted tips to evade ICE, and he said we should approach the southern border like our front door and put a welcome mat on it.
Yes.
When he was a school teacher, he made his 6th graders write Obama memoirs, and he has said fascism will be wrapped in the flag and carrying the cross. Listen to some of the greatest hits from James Tallarico.
This is the guy you voted for.
Our southern border should be like our front porch. There should be a giant welcome mat out front.
There are many more than 2 biological sexes. In fact, there are 6.
God is both masculine and feminine and everything in between. God is non-binary.
Oh, really?
God is non-binary. And by the way, the 6 sexes, just for CNN clarity, as you mentioned, you're exactly right. We have the tape. So your headline, you might want to fix it, alter it, change it, whatever it is. But these are just some of the highlights of what this guy believes in. And again, they are trying to make him, and I do think it's the most dangerous part, as you mentioned earlier. He looks like he's a really nice guy who's a pastor, soft-spoken. He's very charismatic. That's what makes him so dangerous until you actually go to his own words and his own posts and his own speeches, Senator. That's when you find out what a radical he actually is.
Well, yes, but look, at least the guy loves America, loves the American flag, and, well, wait, no, let's actually listen to his own words. I want you to listen to what he said about the American flag. This, again, is his own words. Give a listen.
I often think when reclaiming symbols, I think about the American flag. I think the Confederate flag is a symbol of treason and terrorism, but the American flag is such a complicated symbol for most of us, and in many ways, like Jesus, like the cross, it's been co-opted, and in some ways, its true meaning has been betrayed.
By the way, he said that, Senator, in a church, that the American flag is a complicated symbol for most of us. The American flag has never been complicated for me. I don't know. Maybe you look at it differently.
Well, he says the American flag is a complicated symbol, like Jesus and like the cross. Those are the 3 examples he gives of complicated symbols. Yeah, I don't think any of the 3 are complicated. And the idea that you're running to be a U.S. senator and you look at the American flag and think it's a complicated symbol. Yes, if you are a leftist, yes, if you are a Marxist, yes, if you are someone who has bought into cultural Marxism and believes America is irredeemably racist, believes that we are a nation of oppressors oppressing victims, and that his goal is to overthrow the oppressors. And that is, listen, Graham Plattner in Maine is more explicit
the guy with the
about
Nazi
his left
tattoo,
wing.
the SS
Yes.
tattoo, right? Just to remind people who we're talking about right now. This is a guy that actually mocked and made fun of an American soldier being shot, saying he should have died, and then doubled down on it. And the same guy that has an SS tattoo.
Yes, and look, and who is also an open racist. I mean, he has
Yes.
mocked African Americans. He wears a Nazi tattoo and is demeaning to Jews. He's demeaning to women. He says women rape victims are asking for it. Plattner is at least out in the open about who he is. But Tallarico, let's take the racism of the Democrat Party and listen. Here's something Tallarico said in another church about his own race, about being white. Give a listen.
For me, prophetic voices like Jesus have helped me reckon with my own whiteness, my own masculinity, my own certainty, my own ego. It's a never-ending process, and it's a painful process.
I got to give him self-awareness credit there, Senator. Like when he says it's helped him deal with his masculinity, I think he's nipped that problem in the bud, going vegan and talking the way he does. Like the Lord heard those prayers. I mean, if he was working on the masculinity issue, he has nailed it.
There's no doubt about that. If you listen to what he's saying, and he's in a church, he behind him, if you're watching the video, he has a giant cross behind him, what he calls that what is it, complicated image of the cross, like the American flag and like Jesus. And he said the prophetic voices like Jesus helped him deal, let's take the racist aspect, his own whiteness, which is a hard thing to reckon with. Look, I'm sorry, in my book, being white is not something to be ashamed of, is not a symbol that you are a bad human being. But in the leftist world, white equals evil. This is the Marxist dichotomy. It's why I'm saying he's a wolf in sheep's clothing. What he's saying there, everyone white is an oppressor. You're all evil. You're all illegitimate. That is the same thing. Everyone who is black, you're all oppressed, and you should overthrow your evil oppressors. That is the same garbage that says America has a racist history from day one. That is who we are, as irredeemably racist. It is a lie. Now play the second clip of him talking about his masculinity.
No need to sit and cry over your whiteness or your masculinity.
Right.
Use it.
Yep.
Use it to do something.
Yeah.
Let's be productive.
Wait, which one is it now? I'm a little confused. Are we masculine on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, but Tuesday, Thursday, Sunday, where we just like turn that completely off? Which one is it? I just want to know.
Okay. And this is where you really ought to be watching this in video, because look, Tallarico is a little dude.
Yeah, he is.
He may be the least likely person on planet Earth to be complaining about his overwhelming masculinity. Look, Ben, you're a big dude. I'm pretty sure you could hip check this guy into the next zip code. He also, in another clip that I don't have, explained that he never played sports at all growing up. I believe that.
I believe that. Yes. I believe that as well.
I will say, if you were listening to him speak and you were assembling 1,000 adjectives to describe him, masculine would not be one of them.
Would not be on that list.
I'm just saying, I don't think anyone would. And yet, he described that he was crying over his masculinity, that he was too masculine. It made him cry. Yes. By the way,
it just wasn't fair to everybody else, Senator. It wasn't fair.
If you're crying over your masculinity, it may not be your masculinity you're crying over. Like I'm just saying that there's almost something definitionally false.
Yeah.
But this guy is extreme, which means the Democrats love him.
I want you to pause what you're doing for just 1 minute, and I want you to hear about Alejandra. She lives in a remote community with very few resources and little to no health care. So when Alejandra gets sick, her parents have no real options, no doctors in their community, and no money for real medical care. By the third day, her body was shutting down. She woke up and just long enough to tell her mom, "I can't take the pain anymore. I can't keep going." Her parents drove hours to find a doctor who tried everything, but she needed a private hospital, and that was impossible for her family to afford. And that is when Compassion International stepped in. Now, through Compassion, Alejandra was treated, and against all odds, she survived. She lived because someone, just like you, took action. Right now, unfortunately, there are children just like Alejandra who won't survive unless someone like you steps in. Compassion International partners with local churches, providing children with the support that they need, critical medical care, plus food, education, and the hope of the gospel, all in Jesus' name. So help a child just like Alejandra today. You can visit compassion.com. That's compassion.com. And I got to say, Senator, as we wrap up the show, I do want to ask, when I look at this race and I look at Tallarico and I look at everything you and I have just talked about quickly, and we're going to keep talking about him throughout now until November, I can promise you, because there's more that's going to come out. There's more crazy things he's going to say. But I do like the fact that I feel like there's a little bit of sanity coming back into the political world, where you now can just talk about this individual and what he believes, and you can look at voters in Texas and you can just say, this is not what we believe in. We do not believe in mutilating children. He's obsessed, by the way, with transgenderism. We do not,
and transgender children in particular. He is described. I forget the exact phrase, but people near his heart, or most near his heart, are transgender children.
Yes.
And look, if you think you ought to be sterilizing and mutilating little boys and little girls, that is an extreme out there position. That's not where most Texans are, but it is where Tallarico is.
It is. And I do find a little bit of comfort in knowing that, like, how do you run against a guy like this? In a place like, again, Texas, and I think other Republicans around the country should actually look at this. Sometimes winning is just saying, this is not who we are. We're not for that. We're not a bunch of vegans, okay? We're normal people that eat meat, and we're not going to shame you for that. There's not 6 genders in the world. Certainly Jesus is not advocating for that either. And even if you can quote scripture, if you take it out of context in this way, and you take, I think part of just being a Christian I find so offensive about Tallarico is the fact that he's sitting there saying he's an expert, and yet he seems to be taking the Bible and using it for evil instead of for good, and all these radical ideals that clearly God is not in favor of. God is not in favor of mutilating children. He's not in favor of there being 6 different genders. Like, that's not what he's about.
And remember, even the devil can quote scripture. If you look back to when the devil was tempting Jesus in the garden right before he was crucified, the devil repeatedly quoted scripture at him, and Jesus rebuked him. And so the fact that he quotes scripture does not mean he is being truthful about what the Bible is saying. And if he's twisting it and using it for evil ends that are precisely the opposite of what the Bible is saying, that is not honorable or righteous or truthful. And, listen, I'll say the Paxton campaign has started calling him Low T Tallarico, which I think is pretty darn funny.
Yeah.
But I want to give a caution. It's a caution I gave at the beginning. Do not take this general election for granted. Here's what Tallarico tweeted tonight, right after the primary results. Quote, "I want to thank Senator John Cornyn for his years representing our state. We don't agree on everything, but we both still believe in public service. To Senator Cornyn's supporters, you have a place in our campaign."
Yeah.
Now, that's very savvy. He's making a very open pitch to more moderate Republicans. Vote for me. Look, I'm a nice, sweet, gentle, inoffensive guy. Wouldn't hurt a fly. And if you're not paying attention, if you don't know his record, if you're not listening to what he said, you can be deceived. And so we need to, I think this campaign, an awful lot of it is going to be putting his own words in front of the voters, because they do reveal who he is, but he's really good at being slick and pretending to be something he's not. That in politics is dangerous.
Yeah, no doubt. I love when we get to do a pod like this. Don't forget, you can download Verdict with Ted Cruz wherever you get your podcast 3 days a week. You can also grab my podcast, the Ben Ferguson podcast, as well, each and every day wherever you get your podcasts. And the Senator and I will see you back here on Verdict on Friday. And to all the Republican candidates, had a big night. Congratulations. Running for office is hard, and it's really fun when you get some W's on the board. So that is fun. And we'll see you back here Friday morning.